Creator, the world teems with your beauty and abounds with your artistry and grace.
We sing your praises, God, as we celebrate the promises of Easter.
Help us to notice signs of new life as we traverse both the joys and difficulties of our lives.
Through worship, may we realize that Easter is a season of wild hope and potent promise.
I light the peace candle this morning to acknowledge the tremendous need for healing that exists for almost all of us. It may seem cliche, but there is a fierce truth in the old saying, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." Many people are in need of healing for wounds that cannot be seen, for situations never shared, for turmoil suffered silently. To be kind and honoring of others, gentle and sensitive to another's need, is a way to offer much needed peace to one another and to the world. Amen. Let us unite our voices in the prayer that Jesus taught. Tender, loving God, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the glory forever. Amen.
Oh
Blessings and grace to you this day that God has made. How good it is to be together in this time and space, whether you're here present in the sanctuary or watching from home in this moment or one moment to come. We are community together in this time to come to worship, to remember to whom we belong, to acknowledge that we are still in the Easter season and will be in the Easter season, this Easter tide, all the way up until Pentecost. So it's still appropriate to say Happy Easter to one another. And it is especially important that we look around for places and possibilities where new life may be emerging, ready to bloom. How good it is that we are in worship together. I'm so glad you're here. Know that you are welcome. I do have a few announcements. A couple of things are happening right after this worship service. Plymouth reads poetry today at 12:15 in the chapel or on Zoom, but my hope is if you're here that you might just travel into the chapel for some poetry reading by Plymouth members. If you're watching from home, you can join via Zoom if you go to our website, plymouth.org, 12:15 to 1:15 in the chapel today. Also, after worship this morning at 12:30, there's an information session on a 2023 immigration trip to the Mexico-Arizona border. Some of you may remember that in February of 2020, about 20 of us went to Arizona for an immigration border immersion experience. It was such a privilege to accompany that group. And then we came back and life changed and everything shut down. And all the plans we had to share what we had seen and learned and experienced, they got thwarted by the pandemic. And there are stories to tell, and there is now new enthusiasm to plan another similar kind of experience in February of next year. So if that has any interest to you at all, I hope that you will join us today at 12:30 in the Jackman Room, which is downstairs. And if you're not quite sure where that is, there will be people to help get you there from 12:30 to 1:30 today. Tonight, we celebrate Sundays at 5 with a contemplative worship service. So if you just need a time of centering and quiet to hear wonderful music by Carl Jones and some readings for the season and time for silence and contemplative prayer, I really hope you'll come back at 5 o'clock. We're going to move this service into the chapel. We've been meeting in the sanctuary, but the chapel provides kind of a more intimate space for us to gather. This is also available online as well. These Sundays at 5 are a new worship experience, and we have had to sort of stall and start again because of pandemic and COVID protocol. But our hope is that this time will become a vibrant part of your week and also particularly essential to this community. Sundays at 5, a worship experience in the chapel. Today, I started another new member process with a first Inquirers class. If you have interest in what it means to be a member at Plymouth Church, it's not too late, even if you weren't able to join us this morning at 10. If you have any interest in church membership, please contact me, Beth F., at plymouth.org for some conversation. You can join our next class, which is on May 15th at 10 a.m., our Inquirers class. Participating in the class does not obligate you to join, but we are looking forward to a new member Sunday on June 5th. And then, looking ahead, this is a very busy month. I believe that you could come to Plymouth every day in May for a special something or other. There's just so much going on, and I don't have near enough time to pay tribute to all of the things. So please visit plymouth.org for more information, or if you aren't signed up to receive our Friday email, please alert the church office so that you can be aware of everything that is happening in these weeks to come. But I do want to lift up two important things. One is this Thursday, we continue the conversation around community safety, building the beloved community. This is a Zoom conversation. About 75 people participated last month, and we hope that you might participate again. Our lead minister, Dwayne Davis, will lead the conversation. Please go to plymouth.org to register for this event. On Saturday, May 14th, a whole day workshop hosted by Racial Justice Initiative on community organizing and social movements training. This one-day workshop will walk you through the basis of grassroots community organizing and social movements so you can better understand how your activism can fit into the opportunities before us, as well as participate with skill and understanding. We're delighted that Claudia Albano, who taught social movement theory at the University of California, Berkeley for 20 years, will be our facilitator and workshop guide, and you can sign up again on the Plymouth website. I'm so excited about the work that our campus task force is doing in their various subcommittees. And if you missed it when you came in this morning, Lila Franklin has a table and a display in Jones Commons. She's welcoming any questions or thoughts, have more conversation about the important work of our campus task force and the visioning that they're doing for the future here of our building, of this place and our community, and how we can better serve those among us and outside of our building. So stop by and have a conversation with Lila today. One more time, I'm just going to give a plug-in for the website because truly there's so much happening right now at Plymouth, and we want you to be a part of it. So stay involved by reading and catching up on the news at plymouth.org or by paying attention to our Friday email. We continue now in worship.
Hosanna! Good morning, everybody. Sometimes it's hard to start talking after something like that is sung. It feels like I'm interrupting something. So sorry to interrupt that. Our reading this morning is from the book of Acts, chapter 9, and this is a story that might be familiar to you. May we all hear it with open ears and an open heart today. It is written, "Meanwhile, Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of Jesus, went to the authorities and asked for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any who belonged to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now, as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, 'Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?' And he asked, 'Who are you?' And the reply came, 'I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do.' And the men who were traveling with him stood speechless because they heard the voice but saw no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And for 3 days he was without sight and neither ate nor drank." What does it take for you to change? What does it take for you to change? How do you know when it is time to make changes in your life? What compels you to give up something or some way of being that has been important to you? To change something that has become habitual or easy or comfortable? How have you realized in your past that a different path could be taken? A different future hoped for, a new way of being? And I guess I should ask, have you ever had to do so? And these changes can be large or small. It could be change in relationship, or the tone in which you write an email. It could be a decision to change your relationship with food, or choosing to smile at strangers. Maybe it was your comfort level in public gatherings in a new COVID moment, or a decision about how and where you spend your money. You know yourselves, and you know each other. What does it take for you to change? Today we have been told, maybe for the 1,000th time, the story of Saul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus. And as we heard earlier, it took a momentous event for Saul to change, a bright, blinding light and an unseen voice. Saul was a long-time persecutor of the followers of Jesus, and he is said to have taken part even in the killing of one of the early apostles named Stephen, who was an early leader in the Way, which would later become what we now call Christianity. And so here we encounter Saul, a very prominent person in Roman Palestine, both a Pharisee and a Roman citizen, asking permission to travel to Damascus and to persecute anyone affiliated with the Way. Scholars suggest that this probably happened 5 or more years after Jesus was killed. And so the followers of Jesus were still active, and so was the desire to eliminate them. It also must be noted that the request to travel from Jerusalem to Damascus was no small thing. Damascus, now the capital of modern-day Syria, is about 150 miles from Jerusalem. So this means it could be up to a 2-week journey by foot. I know you all know what that's like, traveling for 2 weeks on foot to get to Damascus, so I don't need to tell you how intentional this has to be. So Saul was very serious to find members of the way and bring them bound back to Jerusalem. So this journey may not have been rare 2,000 years ago, but it certainly wasn't done casually. So, as Saul and his companions were approaching Damascus many days into this long journey, he experienced what we call a theophany. Theophany. Which means an encounter with a manifestation of the divine. This theophany was both visual and auditory, with a blinding light and the voice of God through Jesus. And his companions heard the voice but did not see anyone, nor did they see the blinding light. And this experience left Saul blind and helpless. This theophany left Saul a changed person. This moment changed Saul, the persecutor of the followers of Jesus, into Paul, the apostle, one of the most fervent spreaders of the message of Jesus. Saul was called into something new, and it took a theophany to initiate that change. There are many historical, medical, and psychological theories about this moment, as we are apt to do. They range from wonderings about sunstroke or exhaustion, or a stroke or a seizure and epilepsy. But it seems to me that the fact of this situation is less important in this moment than the truth of the encounter. And the truth is that it left a human being profoundly and forever changed. And change is difficult. You know this. And yet, I think we often forget exactly how hard it is. To change is uncomfortable, sometimes even painful. I've heard my father say, more times than I can even recount, this sentence: people only change when the pain of not changing exceeds the pain of change. I will say it again. People only change when the pain of not changing exceeds the pain of change. It speaks such truth. So often we only make changes to our lives or our institutions or our societies when the only way forward is to change, when we have no other choice, when it is either between change or calamity. I recently heard from a wise friend of mine that he only ended up retiring at the time he did from a demanding job after he got sick in a pretty scary way. How often do people only change their diet or their way of living after the heart attack? Or reform an institution after something goes horribly awry? Change is difficult, and we often only do it when not changing will hurt worse. And change also invariably and inevitably contains loss of some sort. And we don't usually like loss, do we? We don't like to lose. And even good change contains loss. I remember being in a classroom discussion at the divinity school around change and loss, and someone was arguing that good changes didn't contain loss because their outcome was good. Now, Nora, my wife, and I had a newborn at home. And this baby was, and still is, one of the greatest gifts and changes in my entire life. And the amount of loss was staggering. Right? We lost sleep. We lost the ability to function as the adults we once were. We lost this relationship that the two of us had built as two people, and now we were three. Even wonderful change has loss. The poet W.H. Auden, in his poem The Age of Anxiety, says this: "We would rather be ruined than changed. We would rather die in our dread than climb the cross of the moment and let our illusions die." I'm going to say that again. We would rather be ruined than changed. We would rather die in our dread than climb the cross of the moment and let our illusions die. Does this feel resonant at all? So here again, back to Saul. We become witness to Saul experiencing great change, a change so profound that he knew something was different even though he did not yet know where he was going. Saul was in a privileged position and didn't really need to change. He had power and position and the important protection of Roman citizenship. His persecution of the followers of Jesus was acceptable, if not desired. He was firmly in the right, according to the mores of his time. He was upholding the status quo religiously and civically, and was in no way out of bounds in his persecution. But then the discomfort of change was put upon him. He was blinded and frightened and heard the voice of God through Jesus. He was called out of the habits of his culture and civilization, called away from everything that he knew was right. Through blindness, he was called into a new way of seeing and a new way of acting in the world. He was called away from being Saul, the persecutor, and towards being Paul, the apostle. He was called into change, and it was deeply uncomfortable, I am sure. So what does it take for you to change? To move through the discomfort and the loss that comes with change? Do we need a blinding light and the voice of God through Jesus for us to leave behind the things that no longer work for us? To give up the ways that we separate ourselves from God? To stop persecuting other beloved children of God just because our society tells them that they are somehow less than worthy? Do we need a theophany to be able to let go of some of our more hurtful paths? Would we stop consuming the earth, over-consuming the earth, if the light of God blinded us? Would we dismantle the caste systems that are in place if a voice from the heavens came to us? Would we stop inflicting violence upon others, stop accepting poverty as inevitable, stop disconnecting ourselves from others if Jesus told us that these actions were persecuting him? Do we need a theophany to change? Do we need God to shake us from our foundations in order for us to listen? Do we need to become blind in order to gain new sight? Maybe we do. Maybe we do need a theophany to make the pain of change worthwhile. Maybe we do need God to knock us down on our collective roads to Damascus. Maybe we do need this. And then what if this has already happened and we weren't paying attention? Or we dismissed it as being sunstroke or exhaustion. Maybe the theophany is all around us and we have altogether stopped noticing. What if we are waiting to change until we experience the dramatic calling of God and it has already happened? And here we are, still on the ground, blinded, waiting for our sight to return. Maybe it's time to get up. I wonder if a theophany has already happened. Or maybe it's still happening. If we are the people that believe that God is still speaking, that God is present within, among, and between us all, that the other is lovable just like we are, then that theophany is ongoing. It might not be as direct and dramatic as the one in this story, but the visible manifestation of God is everywhere and always. We just have to want to see it and then let it change us. We have to be brave enough to get up off the ground, blind and afraid, and let our companions walk on this road with us. We need to let go of the assumed surety of our past and be willing to be led into an unknown future. We are asked to be courageous enough to let God change us, to see the world anew, and to keep acting in love. We have to allow ourselves to be blinded so that we can see the way that God is calling us to see. We have to stop persecuting Jesus, who is found everywhere in our world. We have to be willing to change. This is our calling. This is what is asked of us. This is who we get to be. We are supposed to receive the surrounding theophany and change. To change does not mean to forget who we once were before, but to root ourselves in that past in order to be changed for the future. What was past is not what will be. But all that will be is rooted in the past. What was past is not what will be. But all that will be is rooted in the soil of the past. So what does it take for you to change? For us to change, to do it together? What does it take to pay attention to the theophany, this continued visible manifestation of God that is around us always? How do we respond to this calling, to this powerful, blinding gift? May we receive this calling with grace and humility, with love and compassion. May we be courageous and not be stopped by the discomfort of change. And may we stop persecuting Jesus in our midst. May it be so, together.
Oh, I
Please join me in the spirit of prayer. Holy One, as we travel the Easter road, we long for signs of new life, hope-filled possibilities emerging and blooming after a long, sterile season. Yet even in the freshness of Easter promises, we gather our prayers this day for a hurting world. War destroys, lives hang in the balance, resources are abused, people weep in despair. We turn our hearts towards the people of Ukraine, where mourning has not yet turned to dancing. Comfort, oh, comfort your people, we cry. May our uncertainty and grief not diminish the trust we have in you, especially now. Come to us in resurrected ways, O God. Be for us a source of light and hope so that we might be your Easter people. Inspire the way to a different world, a world where unity replaces strife, love replaces hate, harmony replaces discord. Generous God, you have gathered us in this time and place to be your church, to be the tangible presence of your love and grace, to display radical hospitality to one another and to our neighbors. We give you thanks for this beloved community and for the way Plymouth Congregational Church strives to be a beacon of resurrection hope in the world. Embolden us with more creative ways of being your church, especially in this still liminal time. May this sanctuary be both refuge and runway. Help us, God, to see things in fresh ways and open us up to receive the inspiration of your Holy Spirit, so that the mission of this church is alive and vibrant. This Easter season, open our hearts to your good changes, O God, and take away our fear of that which is new or different. Excite us with the ideas that you place within our lives and give us a daring new approach to faith. Grant us mercy when we fail and give us courage to move into the future unafraid, open to change. Empower us, O God, with hearts filled with compassion to become even more centered in your love for us. May that love transition our ordinary lives to extraordinary purposes.
Friends, go forth from this place into your many lives and your communities, looking for and recognizing the theophany that surrounds us. And remember that you do not do this alone. We do it together. And as a reminder of that, we hold this covenant together. We covenant with you, O God, and one with another, and do bind ourselves in your presence to walk together in all your ways, according as you are pleased to reveal yourself to us in your blessed word of truth.